We're looking at the market's best momentum companies for trading opportunities. And we're also looking for the common factor that they all share before they break out and become these market leaders. That's entering what we call the launch pad. Gary Glover has been through both lists, and he's here to explain the charts, the setups, the similarities, what he looks for in these leading trades, also where he's seeing these themes and common things happening. So sharing those insights that he pulls out from it. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. Yeah, it's a pretty I was going to say crazy market, but no, it's actually it's a really interesting market there. I wouldn't say crazy. There's just lots of things happening, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's not very often that you would see the Nasdaq down 2% and small caps were up 3.5%. So yeah, so that's that seems a little strange there, but that it's weird because that sort of does. I mean, the thing about election years is they normally run pretty much through to the end of the year. They do have a few corrections there. I think, sort of there's oftentimes in the first half of the year, there's a bit of a pullback. I think maybe something like in August and October, you have sort of small pullbacks there, but you don't get big pullbacks. So I think historically there, you might say between, say, maybe 4 to 8%, you might get pullbacks of that sort of size. So that you just don't get big pullbacks in the market there. So you might get, we should get rotation. So we should see some stocks, running hot, and then others, and then something else doing a lift, and then something else coming off. So far it's been a little bit one-sided. Like definitely Australian's been a bit financials orientated. Maybe the US has been a bit tech orientated there. But in a market where it sort of grinds and has these smaller corrections during the year, there should be rotation sort of through the market there. So I think when I saw that last night, I thought, well, that's actually quite good, because then you sort of worry about the market pulling back, but then something else can do the lifting there, and something else can come up. And you're seeing sectors that look really cheap, and then sectors that look excessively overvalued. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting sort of sign there. It's I think it's good here, man. Look, the beautiful thing for us is I got the XJO chart up here. We have just broken to a new high here, Chris. So we were talking about this VCP, this tightening up here. I mean, normally when you run up impulsively into this and then you tighten up, the odds favour you breaking out in the direction that you've come into that move. So seeing CBA at 126 or 128 or 130, I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to get pushed through here? But yeah, that's why I sort of thought resources might do some of the lifting here, push us through. Maybe those banks can come back, but I wasn't expecting the resources to bounce and banks keep going. So I think CBA is on about 24 times at the moment. That is just, yeah. So it's, I guess the trend is, I guess the thing about CBA is it's probably in line with what we've been, following here for the last 3 years. Is that these sort of the stronger names, they can rally much higher than you think. It's weird. A name like that normally doesn't have these type of moves. It's sort of, that's probably the most. Well, I guarantee that's the highest PE that CBA has probably ever traded on, except maybe the first year or so, But it's it's pretty amazing there. It's sort of gone up so much here. So, but it's we got obviously inflation heading the right direction in the US. So but yeah, it's just interesting. Is sort of some of those growth come off, and then but this is a good sign for us here. Normally when you sort of run through like this, I expect a bit of follow through, Chris, as well. So so it's just I don't, because this is sort of like built up, curled up here. It's not like sometimes when you have maybe a bit of a triangle, you can just go to a new high and then fail there after it's done a bit of work here. But this is curled up here. It's sort of it's like a spring here, so it should really sort of come out here. So I had a couple of big days here, so it really should sort of move on there. And I can see some sectors there which can probably do a bit of driving there. So pretty interesting to me. And got to applaud J Powell too. Actually, I was thinking, Powell would make a great trader, Chris, because when he initially said inflation's transitory, he was obviously proved to be wrong. But as soon as Powell knew he was wrong, he admitted to being wrong and changed his strategy, adjusted, and put in place there. So like a trader there, as soon as he realised he was on the wrong side, took his loss took on the chin, changed the strategy, move forward there. So a bit like Minervini, like if the big sort of VCPs aren't working, they're up, only going sort of small. Oftentimes, he might, instead of having his sort of stops at say 5 to 7% and looking for like a 15 to 20% target in those sort of tighter markets there, if there's not getting the sort of the big moves there, he'll stop in maybe like a 3 to 4% and maybe only go for 10 or 12% gain. So he adjusts to the strategy there, like Jay Powell adjusted to the market there. And I mean, the other thing about Powell is that he's had a clear message and he's basically maintained a discipline the whole time here. So he said, okay, we'll start hiking rates. We'll do it slowly until we sort of slow this thing down, and then we'll sort of whereas you've seen probably Canada and New Zealand go a bit more aggressively to 5.5. I think Powell sort of got it to sort of what 5, and then just kept it nice and slow. So didn't sort of do too dramatic there. Didn't sort of change too much of the trader there, but he has basically sort of kept a really disciplined approach with what's going on here. I mean, we've had everyone having an opinion of the market. I mean, as we know, opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. So, but thousands of opinions about should have gone higher, should have gone lower. But Powell has maintained his approach is a disciplined, nice and sort of steady and nice and slowly. And that's something as a trader you have to do as well, because there's going to be the trader. We're going to have plenty of people telling us, oh, we should have done this, should have done that. People online making great trades. Oh, I should, But you have to maintain your discipline, your approach, stick with the strategy. You really only want to be sort of doing any minor sort of tweaking and some sort of strategy adjustments there. I mean, we've seen here, like, while Canada and New Zealand gone too hard, Australia hasn't gone hard enough. We've been probably left behind. Whereas I think, the US, I think Powell's done a great job here. He's probably sort of stayed in that middle line there. But from a trader point of view, I just think he's got all the characteristics of a great trader there, just because he has maintained that discipline, the same approach there, been pretty consistent. And in the end, I think, has been able to manage that economy, hasn't took it too far to where he's slowed it down too much, hasn't gone too slowly there where inflation is still high like it is in Australia. So he's sort of got the best of both worlds going on there. So I think, if Powell was a trader, I think he'd be quite a good one just based on his approach there. So I just thought some sort of correlation there between what's happening there with the US Fed and what a good trader would be doing in the marketplace in general.
Well, that's an insight I hadn't thought about, and I don't think many commentators have looked at Jay Powell from that perspective. But given your research in the last 12 months, a couple of years of the best traders, and there's a video, I'll put a link down below in the comments, where you've analysed the best traders and all the traits that they have in common. That's exactly what you're talking about with Jay Powell. So you've definitely studied that and studied what Jay Powell's done from an inflationary and how it impacts the market perspective. We'll look at the top momentum companies and we can talk about the sector, because I know you've got a bit of comments on the sector rotation, the launch pad, and what you've seen happening. But if we look at the top momentum companies in the market now, obviously NVIDIA's not on the ASX, but you've got the chart there. Is this to show us how the leaders lead?
Yeah, I'll be 30 seconds here, Chris. I won't be. It's just think it's really important there because it does sort of highlight. Like, obviously, this has been one of the number one stock, high momentum sort of move here. But we've seen here in this rally, see this last leg in the rally here, it's gone up pretty aggressively there. Nice tight consolidations there. Okay. Last thing on the chart here is 1, 2, 3 big days down. Okay. So if you had managed to sort of ride this wave here and then you hadn't sort of sold it and this kind of like had a bit of a whack here and you don't use stops for some reason, that sort of like is an overbalance of the trend there. So see how all the pullbacks are small? This is now the biggest pullback of that move there. You saw it in here, nice and tight. Thing tips over a bit here and then goes through a bit of a correlation here as well, a bit of a consolidation. So this is basically what we call an overcorrection of the trend. And you can see the selling there. Because look at those 1, 2, 3 bars there. We've got 3 of the biggest bars for the year, all coming off that high there. And then, so what happens after, this is a really important lesson here, is that once a trend overbalances turn down, you usually get one shot sell out at a good price. Normally what will happen is that the market will go back here. So one or two things occurs here. You get like a little three-wave, little ABC, maybe rally like this, and makes your first high low. Or sometimes these overbalances, they can actually go and make you can actually go to a false break here, Chris. They can actually make a marginal new high and then expand down. So the beauty, if they do go to marginal new high and then like false break here, so you've got an overbalance and a false break, that's probably a cracking short signal. And then you're sort of, going to come back down here. But you can see how the volume's a bit lighter on this rally here. And then bam, a bit of selling here. So to me, this looks like we're going to come back here to at least the 50-day, just looking at that sort of stock there, just on the price action there alone. So yeah, I'm still sort of buoyant for the rest of the year here, but this is had a hot run here. Probably needs to go through a consolidation here. I suggest you'll probably get something time consuming here. So it'll come back down to the 50. Maybe you'll get a bit of a bounce there, but then it'll probably peter out a bit and probably won't be the main game here. You'll probably start to see other sectors there. So I just thought I'd highlight that. I just think it's really interesting. But, I think it's a really good sign here that we're seeing the smalls do pretty well, while some of the techs have sort of sold off. And last night we saw, gold up, uranium up, oil up. So a lot of the resource names were pretty buoyant. So that's good for our market. But we should see rotation there. If we're going to have that sort of typical election year type of trend there, we're going to sort of have, and it is a pretty radical market. There's definitely seeing some sort of weird moves there, but definitely seeing a few trending moves as well. So on the quarterly momentum there, Chris, FBR was number 4. So we talked about
this one last week.
Yeah, the robotics. So definitely want to keep an eye on, because it's in that sort of area there where it could, so so all they've done is actually ship one of these things over to the US, Chris, one of their so they're going to be testing it over there in the US market. So everyone's getting excited by that. So definitely one to watch here. It's just a lot of shares on issue, but it is a pretty interesting sort of stock as well. So that, being able to build a house with robotics and stuff there, potentially game changing for, the building industry. So,
you can imagine in those tornado ravaged states in the United States, they've got the whole town's just torn apart from a storm.
Yeah.
You get limited supplies, limited labour. They could just get the supplies and keep the robots going. They build houses faster.
Yeah, you can see how this had a pretty good run into 17, because obviously it was pretty hot at the time there, but probably like some of these new technologies there, takes a while to sort of come back a bit, and sometimes it's maybe a bit of ahead of its time, but now that sort of AI robotics is sort of is in the sort of in the main fora now. You sort of see them, it's obviously it's taken I mean, we basically I remember watching these videos back in 2017, Chris, about the robots building a house here, but it's obviously it takes a while to get approval to streamline it and get but there is some interesting groups in there. I think Brickworks have got a stake in Fast Brick as well. So the fact that some of those the Soul Pats guys and stuff are in there, Brickworks guys are in there. It is pretty interesting. So it's definitely one to be sort of keeping an eye on here. It's had a bit of a pop here. I prefer, me personally, I'd probably wait for a bit of a consolidation there. Still pretty early. So they've only just sort of shipped in the first thing into the States there. So this is ACW, which is that actinogen, which is the dementia one there. So again, they've sort of got some trial results coming out here soon here. So market's getting buoyed there because they've sort of, I think there's a high dosage trial, and they've had some pretty good results so far. So again, pretty, bit of a game changer, maybe sort of stock as well. Obviously, dementia's, so far very little good outcomes in that area. No good treatments. I mean, like a lot of the big pharmas have pulled out of dementia. They just found it too hard. So, definitely one to keep an eye on there is these actinogen. Had a bit of a run here, so probably want to see. I saw that there was a little bit of a flag in here. Did sort of tighten up here, Chris. You saw a little bit of this, selling dry up, and then it's just gone through again. It's tightened up again here, So still looks pretty good. It's not sort of selling off too much here. I prefer to probably see a larger consolidation there, but still looking pretty good.
Both of them are possible candidates for a high and tight flag. If you get that consolidation around the low volume, that could be, who knows, in a couple of weeks we could be talking about that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I mean the triple T there. Sort of, it's weird actually. The triple T. I went to a presentation for this Titomic. I think it was must have been 2018 as well. Sort of just kind of reminds me a little bit of fast brick as well. The technology's been around for a long time here, but in terms of sort of getting be able to prove it and everyone test it and then people get comfortable with it, it can take a while for it to all develop here. So just think this is an interesting trend here, because obviously we had a bit of a run here, then a bit of a pullback. Didn't really sort of sit on top there, just did sort of, I have noticed here recently, just a few of them, I like to see them sit exactly on top or sit above, but I have noticed recently there we are seeing a few things just sort of flutter with the sort of key levels and just maybe spend a day down and then come back. So that's probably still okay there. What's probably important there is just not to see any selling, and which we didn't really see too much sort of selling there as well. And this is sort of built again here. Now we can see here that this is the old high here. I like to use the bodies of the candle there, but even like, if we're looking at the top of the candle there, you've just come back and sat on top of that as well. So this has sort of come back a pretty square. And look at that, again, look at that through there, Chris, as well. So pretty good lesson there. Yeah, no selling. There's not really much selling there. So the fact that this sort of sat on top of that previous high there, no real sort of selling here. And then we had this one good day up here, would have been a bit of a signal there. You got inside day and then we're on again. So that's what we want to sort of see from these things, is sort of get a sharp move initially, maybe come back, consolidate, maybe try and sit on top of the high, or a little cup and handle, or a good, nice little tight setup. But these sort of, strong trending stocks there, you just got to watch for them to sort of, they do sit on top of the old highs there. That's still pretty good signal for me. But just watching the volume as well, just would see how this is pretty chunky in here, and then like very little selling. We've literally got one day of selling in the whole lot here, and then we've gone higher again here. So that's why you sort of got to keep an eye on these sort of, maybe not so much the new technology there, but just maybe technology which can be can change an industry, can have a big effect there. CYL was pretty interesting here. I think this might have been on our list there a few weeks ago. There's some Catalyst Metals there. I thought it might have maybe run up here, found resistance there, but it did go slightly higher. And I'm not sure how they're sort of, how these cup and handles work, Chris, when they're sort of slightly higher there. I can't remember the Bulkowski rules there, if they're a higher handle on the right-hand side there, but it did give us a bit of a handle there. There wasn't a lot of selling in here after having a nice run up here. And then we did sort of see that, that little David Ryan type of sort of, where we've sort of gone to the high here, even we've gone to a new high, but then we just see how tight it is underneath the high there, and then power, we've gone straight through there. So I'm really sort of watching this. I said a few of our followers there actually on Twitter were asking about stocks there. So there was a couple that I did see. I think I saw ASB has done a pretty tight consolidation so far under the high. And ASB is in that defence area, Chris, as well, which is another leading sector as well. So it's the sort of sector we should be watching there. But it was just interesting, that sort of setup there was, so it's not, you prefer like to sort of see it maybe come down a different angle, but yeah, they can still be pretty good there. But yeah, I mean, what was the difference there with the cup and handle? Can you remember what the odds are? Did it mean any less or any greater for success?
I'm going to go on a limb because it's a good 8 to 10 years since reading that, but I think it was actually, he preferred it to consolidate under the high or the far left. If it breached out and sort of gave a false break, I don't think that was as positive.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So ideally, he liked it to that handle where you've got, November, December. It was a 20 or 30% run up into the start of the cup. and then the dip, and then the rally, and then the
Yeah,
handle. So
yeah.
the handle, if it breached the high and made a higher high, that was
We might argue
indicative of
this is a little handle
handle in
here,
there.
the
Yeah,
lower one, and then then you got another one maybe setting up as well. So it might which sounds funny actually, but some of those sort of that was something that I did notice in those going through the Mag 7 sort of stocks there. We did see multiple cup and handles back to back.
yeah,
So yeah, so you do sort of see them there. So yeah, so it is interesting to watch for them there. Just what you're looking for is that sort of to go back near the high. So whether it's obviously just say preferably under, but they can be just slightly under, can be slightly above as well. But you definitely want them. I think I agree with you. I think you want to see them. I'm sure
under.
they're better to be under. But you're just watching for that light. No selling here, and then dry up here. And I think again, if you just waited for that little, that's probably a little B wave in there, Chris, as well. I think you've sort of got to have a catalyst there for these things as well. I think I've found here that sometimes you can't just sort of guess they're going to sort of come through. You got to have a methodology for a process that you're going to follow there. So I know when they sort of come back like this, I'm looking for them to at least break a little bit of a B wave before they sort of come out, before I would look at them there, which might sort of have you looking at this day here. Yeah, but I get the beauty there is if that's your entry then, and there's just you probably stop down here, you've got it pretty tight. And it's all about having a discipline and having a kind of approach there with these things.
Well, when you talk about cup and handle, my favourite all-time cup and handle was Magellan MFG in 2012, and that just started off about $1.80 and went towards $70. It was just
yeah, that'd be nice.
There was a lot in between that, but when you get a cup and handle on the daily and the weekly, so cup and handle in the cup and handle, that can be a really potent signal. But SKS, well, that's a tip.
Yeah, I hadn't looked at it this morning. I did this last night there, so I just highlight this one just because we did have this VCP in there, Chris, as well. So nice and tight in there. We sort of did see the breakout there. Again, there was a few lines in there, so it might have had you a little bit nervous there, but nothing sort of sustained here. I guess what the beautiful thing sort of here is that this thing sort of tightened up in there, and it really you're waiting for it to come out first. So again, you've got to be a disciplined approach there. You wouldn't want to enter this until you saw that little bit of a break above here. So the break above the lower highs and that. So this would have been the first day here. This day would have still been under here. So this would have been the first day breaking through this. So if you're like me, what I might do is I might, what's that? 76 cents is that high there, and that high is say 77. So if it breaks, say 76, I might start with a little parcel, and then if it breaks 77, then I might add to that parcel, and then if it breaks out the high, then I might add the final parcel. So that would be 82.5 cents. So if it gets to 83, I might buy up to 83.5 or 84 cents, a limit or something like that, and then so that way I built into my. I've started with a small parcel, and I only add to that if it goes higher. And this is one thing that obviously the great traders do is they never average down, they only average up. So you're basically buying a starter, confirms, you buy another position, you confirm again, and then away. So therefore you've got pieces all in here. So you get an average price sort of somewhere in the middle, and then you just bring your stop up to keep your risk nice and contained here. And then hopefully the thing just sort of runs and goes here. So. But yeah, it's had an extra leg here, and it's again just another case of these sort of leadership group just staying pretty firm here. So DDB, I've just got this one just to keep an eye on here, just because it's had a bit of a sharp jump here. Nothing to trade there, but I'd probably just put that on the watch list just because it has had gone from 14 to 28, so it's gone up 100%. So we watch this thing and just see if it can sort of consolidates there, but don't be chasing those ones there. HAS, sort of one just probably for me to go and have a look at actually. Just the thing had been a pretty nasty downtrend there. Was a lot of volume going on down here, so people exiting and stuff there, and then maybe sort of starting to build here now. So got a little bit of a B wave break in here. some volume there, but we're still in a downtrend here, so not not the best looking name there, but just probably one to have a look at, see what's happening there, and maybe one just to sort of watch here. IMB, this is more our sort of classic cup and handle there. So we sort of had that, pretty strong rally here, had a nice sort of consolidation there, gone back up to retest the high. So we do go slightly higher there, but we're really only just by, by a cent or two there. But then the whole thing just tightens up here, stays really, really tight underneath the high there. So it struggles to go down here, and then we start coming out here. Once we break through here, even just buying this high here, Chris, as well.
I think this is one we talked about before, about that congestion there into late June with those really tight consolidation and contained volume.
Yeah, and it's funny, they sort of, even like you see there's a little tight there, you just don't know how far these things are going to run here, So yeah, maybe it looks a little tight, a little bit high here, but we've broken out here. There's been pretty good volume here, so you just don't know how far this is going to keep going here. So, it's probably not our job to sort of know how far it's going to go. Our job is to sort of trade our process, our plan. If it gives us a trigger, we put the trigger on, and then we hope that it does something fantastic. AIM was sort of one that's had a bit of a small move there. It's a bit of a smaller name there. Does have some history of sort of popping and dropping a bit there. So probably a bit less reluctant there, a bit choppy in the volume, nothing too volume orientated there. So nothing was sort of jumped out at me on there. So probably a lesser sort of name there. That's the quarterly momentum there.
So they're the strongest companies with the best gains momentum-wise over the last quarter. And then we know that, well, from history and looking at this for years, when we get these momentum leaders, often they show up in the launch pad beforehand. And this is also somewhere where you've noted and traded off the back of new themes coming up, uranium, gold, and so on. So we know that a lot of listeners have sort of commented and said, look, we really like your insights on the themes. Is there anything that you're noting when you're looking at the launch pad as a whole on the market this week? What are you seeing coming through in the numbers and the stocks in this list from a thematic perspective, especially because you've just talked about the rotation, the market going up, the financials are going harder, helped by a bit by the materials. Is there anything else happening in there?
Yeah, there is, but it's sort of like it's probably outside of your 30 here, as we're sort of talking about earlier, is that so the viewers don't know that obviously we look at the 30-30 here, but we do have a larger list there, and Chris does sort of look at the top 6 sort of sectors as well, from momentum and from the launchpad there, and there was just a ton of property names in those. So it's funny, the property names haven't made, I think might only be 1 or 2 in the 30 here, not maybe only 1 or something there, but there's a ton in the whole, as you say, in the 200 there, there's a stack, sort of from 30, 40, 50 down there. So there's a lot of property names all jumping here, all at the same time here. And there was a few guys talking about property stocks this week being a bit undervalued. I did see a property analyst there 2 weeks ago saying about numbers. We were sort of studying movement into capital cities and saying it had improved, but still shy of pre-COVID numbers. But as firms are sort of saying, going to come back in the office at least 2 or 3 days a week, there is sort of an improvement in the number of people heading back to capital cities and to the city and working stuff there, but still shy of the numbers there. So no surprise to see a bit of a jump there, but yeah, I guess he's sort of saying, viewers can't see there, but in your 200 list there, there's a stack of property names jumping in there. So I think, CWP was sort of 1. I think the MGR, it's had a bit of a jump as well here.
HPI was 23. Yeah, you're right. And there was most of them outside of the 30. And with what you're saying there about the analysts, I guess that really fits with the whole point of the launchpad is it's trying to identify those large institutional movements where it doesn't necessarily shoot the share price up, it just gives it a higher floor. And that's what we're mathematically trying to identify is the companies that are kind of having that consolidation or some sort of movement.
Yeah, it's a tough one there because look at that, that's the COF. So it just sort of shows property has been, it's been all one way traffic all the way down here. So definitely seeing a bit of volume here. Still got a pretty massive downtrend here, so still a bit risky, I think. But it is interesting there that we have seen a bit of a jump in that, and it's at some stage there. I mean, we know asset prices, high inflation pressures just keep going higher there. So as much as we've seen less people going to the city there, maybe less demand for that. It will probably change a little bit, improve. So, and the market will always look ahead, Chris, as we know. So they'll look at the change there, improvement there, and think, oh, maybe this is going to keep improving, and look forward as to what might be coming down the track here. So definitely one to keep an eye on there. You and I were just commenting there, probably not the highest beta sector. So in terms of performance there, but let's if you start running out of sectors that are not performing there, then maybe you possibly sort of turn there. I've sort of probably there's plenty else happening in some of the materials at the moment which look pretty firm. So I'll probably stick with those. On the launch pad there, saw judo, which I thought was sort of interesting there, just because the whole thing is sort of impulsive move, and now we've sort of stayed in this bit of a tight, rectangle here. So, it's just a long-serving sort of consolidation there as well. So potentially, maybe judo can crack out of this little rectangle, and that's been pretty high and tight as well. If you think about, that's a pretty sharp move here, down from what 80 cents up to 140, and the whole thing sort of stayed here, above 120 here. So it's really only had like a 20-cent correction, where the rally's been sort of 60 cents. So it's stayed in the top third there. So sort of not showing too much weakness there, which is a good sign there for judo there. And the rest of the sector is way overvalued. So why can't it get way overvalued too? So Peninsula Energy, pretty messy sort of chart here. There's a bit of a VCP in here, Chris, like this sort of whole thing is tightening up, but it's a pretty small name here, so wasn't, it's tightening up here. Definitely got a bit of volume coming in here, so that's sort of interesting. But yeah, maybe too small for me, but not the worst looking chart there. SGR is probably just not not going to be hot enough there, but there is a VCP in here, Chris. This is sort of pull back here, tightening up here. So, it's sort of starting to improve here. So, not for me. I'm not sure we'll get enough beta in there. OCC had a bit of a jump here, a bit thin, a bit lightly traded. Again, not for me. I think AIM was on the list again. It was okay. Deep yellow there. I mean, it's funny. I like look at these uranium names here, Chris. If I stretch right out here, we've had a big move here. So I've had a big drive here. So I've had had this sort of drive coming out of 2020, then a bit of a consolidation, another drive here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drives. So big. I don't really like to see these 1, 2, 3 overlapping tops there. That's just a bit of a negative thing. So just has maintained the trend here still, so I did get asked about some of these uranium stocks here in the last fortnight there. And I thought we might see a bit of a bounce in the short term there, but just some of them have overbalanced as well. So I think maybe Paladin there has sort of, so see how that's been a nice sort of pretty robust trend. That's now the biggest correction of the whole move. So it's like an overbalance in the trend. So we'd either go back and make a lower high, or maybe potentially go to a margin new high, but I struggle to see that from here because it's been quite a large overbalance, probably been twice the correction of all the prime moves here. So, but you'll always get a bit of a bounce here back up into the zone there. But they do worry me a little bit, these things here. This has been quite a large correction here so far. So more likely to go through, at best, you're going to likely go through something like this, is what I'd suggest there. If this is going to go have a bit of a pause here, you might go sideways for a bit there. So I just don't, you might get a short-term bounce there, but I'm a bit worried about that overbalance there in the medium to longer term there. VYS, bit small, but the whole thing, a bit of a VCP in here. Sat on top of the previous high, pretty constructive. Some okay volume in there, but again, just too small for me. DDR had a bit of a bounce here as well. Been a bit of a laggard here lately. Hasn't been one of the leading names in there. So volumes are pretty light too as well. So that doesn't sort of really attract me in there. NXG. Yeah, it's interesting there. It's just look, you saw some heavy volume at the low here. Definitely sort of come back here. Probably just wanting to sort of keep an eye on it. It's a little gappy here, the stock, isn't it? So lots of gaps in here. So that's good if you're on the wrong side. Just not good if you're on the other side. So yeah, just a bit of a tricky stock to trade here. XRF was last on the list there. But this has been, this has had a pretty steady trend there. It does tend to sort of come back a bit, but yeah, heading in the right direction there. I thought there was a few other interesting stocks on the board there, Chris. I thought Zero was pretty interesting. That was really showing sort of leadership qualities as well. And the whole thing was sort of tightening up here, Don't know if you call this a bit of a cup and handle in there. But the whole thing's just, there's a VCP, the whole thing just tightened up in here. You can see here, these sort of few days there. And I thought this sort of showed its hand here the other day. When it sort of, I think it sort of gapped down there and the market was a bit weak, and then it just reversed up and was pretty strong here. So yeah, so that I did actually add something to my model portfolio. Zero, I thought it looked pretty bullish there. Just I think once it comes through here, can't see how it's not going to go back up there. And I just, I know a lot of brokers are talking about, this is in the sweet spot here at the moment. Zero, it's sort of going. Got massive revenues growth there, but now sort of swinging into profitability. So it's in that sort of sweet spot for, where earnings and revenue both running together. So, it's got got kind of one of those rare formulas where both are sort of going to be pretty, pretty aggressive together. Thought AGC was pretty interesting there. The sort of one that was on the list a couple of weeks ago, Chris. This definitely caught my eye here. Copper gold had a big run. It's come back here. The whole thing tightened up here. There wasn't much selling there. They do have another. I think they basically just had some hits, the drilling program. So now they've actually raised money. So again, I think we talked about PH2 and M4M. I think PH2 hadn't raised money, so that's why I didn't want to touch that. But I thought this one looked pretty interesting. The whole thing had dried up here. It's had a bit of a jump here out of that consolidation, which I think looks quite good. And they get another drilling program here over the next month or two. So oftentimes we can see some big hits, and then they raise money, then the drilling program starts again. You can get a secondary run here. So I thought that looks pretty interesting to me. ASB, we talked about that, again, just that leadership sort of group. Look how high and tight that is in there. It sort of reminds me a little bit of Nuix, NXL, had the whole thing sort of, tightened up under the high there. So I think they might have had a little cup and handle in there, but the pullback was just, because look at that volume so far, Chris, as well.
Just
so not seeing any selling there so far. So is in a leadership group there. So, if you look at that chart and another chart and was in a weak group, you know which one you'd be choosing. So there was a little BCP on John Lynn Group as well. So this thing sort of had a big pullback here, tightened up again here. So we're sort of starting to break, maybe a little break here of a little one here, but then we're breaking above this little high. It's a bit lightly traded here so far. That's not really, you'd like to see this a bit heavier in here, but still an okay setup here, but just not really giving you the, to me, not giving me the green light to add to that position. If I had that posse on there, I wanted to see a bit more evidence there. IMR is definitely one that I'm watching pretty closely here, because that's had a pretty good run here, some pretty good volume after a bit of a consolidation there. Did just break above this little high here, so maybe interesting to see we get a little bit of a throwback there. It's very, very thin here, the stock. I watched this sort of stock run all the way up here, and as we got to the high here, pretty much all the sellers just disappeared. So, but yeah, the stock's had a few wins as well. So it's a really interesting company, this one. So yeah, one company to go and have a closer look at there, I think. But yeah, if you look at that chart there on the weekly there, Chris, as well, sort of had a bit of a bounce consolidation, good volume in both of those. Some okay volume in here, but this is sort of like a big, this is a big VCP in here now as well. And you're just starting to come out here. So we have gone above the 60-cent mark here. So got a little bit of a B-wave break here, but volume's quite good as well. So yeah, this looks really interesting to me. Just I love that sort of chunky volume there. So saw good volume off the the pre-low and then come back down here, some really good volume here. And I think we had 2 or 3 days here the other day, and the selling just dried up. So, okay, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, interesting. We'll see what happens today here. We've had a little bit of selling early here, but we know that when sometimes we can get a little bit of a throwback here just to test a few. But definitely one stock to be keeping an eye on there, I think. Mentioned the PH2, that had a little bit of a still staying that tight. That was on the list there, I think, a week or two ago on the launch pad. Whole thing sort of tightened up here. I didn't touch that one there just because it sort of didn't do a raise in there, like organised finance elsewhere, but still could be okay there. M4M was another one that I didn't mind as well there, but it just didn't really kick on there. I think it had a nice tight consolidation there, kicked up out of the range there, had a bit of volume there, but hasn't really, The only good thing is it's had the 1 day of selling there. So far, not too much is coming through here, so it's a little negative, but again, not sort of seeing that aggressive selling there. So yeah, that's I think that's about it. Actually, I think yeah, actually this is the DTL was a bit of a VCP in here as well, Chris. That sort of software name there. Maybe come back a little, like to see that maybe a little higher, but not too much selling in there. Interesting to sort of see whether this can turn up here. So I think I'm just seeing trades everywhere, really. Yeah, so it's not an environment there, and I think it's a really healthy sign for the market, seeing some sectors pull back and others go up here. So hopefully that continues.
Well, as you're seeing those sectors rotating, and you said a lot of opportunities really coming through and just trades everywhere, is there a certain setup that you're finding working the best at the moment, or it's kind of a bit of your normal setups that you're always using? Is there one that you're favouring? How do you see that?
So I try and look at the VCPs, and then and I do a few false breaks as well. So the false breaks haven't been working as well. So I think sort of we're coming down to the bottom. There've been a few really good ones, but then recently I've noticed they're coming off the bottom. They're having a bit of a bounce. They're coming back for a retest again. Some are breaking down, some are just breaking down and then recovering again. So they're just getting chewed up a bit there. So not finding that working there. Whereas I find the VCPs and just like with the market's up pretty strong and it has that really tight consolidation and starts to come out of it. That's what you want to be looking at. So yeah, really trying to look. Me personally, I've sort of tried to really look at the stronger names there. I mean, we've seen Santos has remained pretty firm here. That hasn't sort of shown too much weakness there. So that's had a nice jump out of that 10 level consolidation. Still looks pretty firm to me. And the Woodside was the false break there. That's working, so that's pretty good. Just trying to think what that. I mean, like the golds there, we saw a few of those. That RMS there sort of made that. The whole thing sort of stayed on top of that previous high there. That's a nice tight consolidation there. There's nothing. Couldn't see anything negative with that. That's a really tight consolidation there. So it's come out of here so far looking okay there. But yeah, just trying to stay with those stronger names, Chris. I guess the beauty there is you just sort of, even if you're wrong there, I find these ones will move initially in your favour. And if you do get stopped out, you're probably getting, you're getting stopped out pretty small. So, but yeah, seems to be putting in trades there. I sort of find I'm trying not to resort to having too many positions on. Because as a trader there, if you start getting too many positives, I'd rather just have concentrated. I'd rather just sort of follow a few names there. Yeah. So I've definitely been trying to stay in the stronger sectors, the stronger areas of the market, the stronger stocks, and just be a bit more concentrated in there. And it's hard. I just it feels like it's seeing trades everywhere, but I just know when you see trades everywhere, you want to trade them there. But as a trader, you've got to really maintain your discipline. A bit like Jay Powell, in regard of all the noise out there, just same message, keep the process there. Don't get swayed. I mean, he'd be more under pressure than anyone, but he's just stayed nice and tight, consistent all the way along there. So that's what we, as good traders, there, we got to follow that sort of path. Keep it nice consistency as well. So so you got to have your rules there. Maybe I guess the only thing is just trying to sell some of the heat. So I have sort of sold some. One of the things I've basically reviewed all my trades this year, Chris, as well. So any trade I've exited in the last 2 weeks, I've actually reviewed this week. So I'll make it a big thing just to keep sort of reading about the reviewing process. If you review your trades like 6 months later or 12 months later, it's almost like it's too long ago.
You detached from it, you've forgotten the emotion, the focus, and what was it that got you into it, and what you had the opportunity cost of what you gave up to take that trade.
Yeah. So you should be reviewing them at least sort of like each month, sort of at the latest. So just so they're sort of fresh in your mind, and you can sort of keep that. Because I noticed that in this market, I've sort of seen that by selling into some of the heat, it's worked out pretty well. So I've typically just been sort of building up to say 20, 15, 20% positions, and maybe selling 5% of the heat. So when I was doing my review, I was thinking, gee, all selling into heats work really well. Maybe I need to go from selling a quarter, but maybe into half into that heat, because the market is a bit choppy here and it's pulling back, giving us a second or third chance here. So it's not just sort of taking off here. So that made me think, okay, next time I get to a 20% stake in something I like and it has a big move, rather than take off a quarter, maybe take half off, and then get a chance to come back there. Because most of those trades I've managed to get them back on again after a bit of a retracement and build them up. So that's the only thing. That's really the only change for me. So it hasn't changed my strategy. It's just a little tweak there. So just to what the market is sort of saying. So but all pretty good. No complaints this week.
Well, that's a great trading strategy with refinement through reflection. And you're talking about great traders and Jay Powell's approach of cancelling the noise out and sticking to your process. We'll put on screen your whole playlist of your Tuesday reports, where we go through that and you talk about your portfolio and your trades you're taking for the week. To that end, we'll say thank you, Gary Glover from Notice Capital.
Thanks, Chris.